special meeting of the Board of Education, Monday, August 23rd. Call the meeting to order. I think we will no changes to the agenda, so I take a motion to adopt it. Second. TJ? David? Motion by TJ, seconded by David to adopt the agenda. All in favor? Bree? She's muted, looks like. Bree, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. You in favor of adopting the agenda?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm not hearing very much, sorry.
Okay.
I'll have to relay it probably through this.
Do that. Okay. We'll call that 7-0. Okay. We have a delegation this evening. Mr. Naasz.
Can you give him a microphone? Because
Yes.
speaking from someone who's tried to listen to the meeting, it's nearly
It's a
impossible.
lot easier if you guys want to do it here. Wherever you would
That's
like
fine,
to
yes.
stand. Yes, it's probably closer.
As long as you're corded
Okay. All right, thanks for having me tonight. I'm gonna pass out some sheets there, if you guys could just pass those around. I just got a few quick pieces of information that I'd like to share with you guys regarding the wrestling team. So, make sure everybody gets their hands on one here. So the program was established in 1975. Coach Smidler launched that program, and he was the head coach for 30 years. We're getting ready to start the 47th year of wrestling here at Lincoln High School. Had a lot of success. That's not the only metric that we measured the program by, and we continue. All the people that have been a part of it since I've had the pleasure of living here since 2005. We have had 6 state champions. We've had 10 state finalists and well over 40 state placers. I haven't been able to update that list. We need to get that updated off of what's on the wall in the hallway there. I've had the ability to reach out to some of my former colleagues when I was the head coach. I talked to Minneapolis, Osborne, Ellsworth, and Beloit about what their numbers were in last year, and we are right there. If you see on the sheet of paper, Beloit and Minneapolis, they had 15 junior high wrestlers last year. We had 14, and I got these numbers from Coach Knapp, so those are the numbers that I'm referencing. I don't know if Nikki, if you have anything different than that, but Mr. Tate. Let's see, high school. Oh, and Osborne, I contacted Coach Brown because they are in our league. They had 2 junior high wrestlers last year. If you look at the high school numbers, their high school numbers are a little bit larger. Beloit and Rock Hills together had 23. Minneapolis and Bennington had 20. Osborne had 3 at the high school level. So, you know, we had 8. That's not a number that we want. I had the luxury of having 24 kids out at one point, which is about a quarter of the student population. If I went and did that at Salina South, we'd win a lot of 5A state titles. Numbers are down a little bit. That's not where we want them to be. Ultimately, the goal of the youth club, Lincoln County Wrestling Club, junior high and high school, is to get kids involved and get those numbers up. I just want to look here. Up in the top right corner, I just kind of went through and went off the Acacia's 2020-21 numbers for enrollment, and I added those together just so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like with us added together with Sylvan versus those other programs. So, I also, as I mentioned, I reached out to Ellsworth. He didn't provide me any numbers. I don't think he really wanted them out there, but he did say numbers are short. So they're kind of in the same boat, a much bigger school, working to get their numbers up. So I have no doubt that Steve will get those numbers up at Ellsworth. Working with the NFHS very regularly through work, we're privy to some of their numbers. And the wrestling numbers, the boys side, they're down 30%, if not a little bit more, and the girls are down 14%, and all NFHS numbers are down. I don't believe that they are going to put out their typical participation number report this year because the data from this past year was so skewed. So it's hard to get a really good idea of what last year really was. There's so many states that didn't participate, and a lot of people had some fear around the virus, so they stayed away from sports. Kind of the same trend with Keisha. I've worked with Mark Lentz for a long time, and he said the boys were down 900 wrestlers this year, and the girls held even. I believe last year was the second year of having a girls' state championship, and they had 972. I believe it was about 979 the year before. They were projecting about a double. They thought they were going to double their participation numbers. So there's a kind of a phantom number of 900 there that they were down. I mean, it's hard to know without knowing, but they were fortunate to hold steady. They beat the national trend of being down 14%. I just went and looked through just a little bit, and it's not unheard of for a 1A school to have wrestling. There's quite a few 2As, a lot of 8-man schools that have transitioned recently that have wrestling programs. But I put the list there for you to reference. Those are the 1A schools last year that hosted their own program. There are obviously other 1A schools that co-op, but these were the schools that were the anchor, the host of the co-op. So I referenced those 8-man schools. Hoxie is one of them. In 2015, Hoxie had 2 wrestlers. There was talk of cutting the program. It's a very proud program. I believe they've got 10+ state titles. Coach Porsche does a great job. And from 2015 to 2018, they grew the numbers. They had a 3rd place finish at state championships, followed a year later by another 3rd place, a 2nd place, and then this last year they won the state championship. And it's not on there, but I would like to note that I know there are approximately 130, 40 students in their high school, so it's a little bit larger than us. But on the other hand, with their basketball program, they were 24-0 and ranked #1 in the state before they got upset in the 1st or 2nd round of the state championship. So Hoxie does not have a participation problem. Their kids are involved and they're out there and they're doing stuff. So Hoxie is definitely something to shoot for and strive for. And with that, they've also, I believe, were a Final Four team with their 8-man Division I program. And then 8-man success. Last year, the top 2 finishing teams in the 3-2-1A combined state championship. First place was Hoxie, 8-man won. 2nd place was Hill City, 8-man won. So it's been a big shift. You know, the demographics of the state aren't what they used to be. It's not what it was when I was growing up. Things look different. You know, the enrollments are down. Team roster sizes are down. But we also have a lot more schools co-oping and participating, adding wrestling that never had it before either. This past year and a half, I believe we've had 3 new programs getting launched in the state of Kansas. Nemaha Central or Valley, they've changed their names. They've added wrestling, I believe, 2 years ago. Ellenwood has added a wrestling program. And then there's another one in kind of the Emporia area. It's a 2A school that's added, and it's escaping me right now. So there's a lot of different things to take into consideration with these numbers. I did go ahead and I reached out to Craig Batchman, the AD over at Sylvan Lucas, and had a conversation with him about numbers. And he, off the top of his head, he believes they're going to send 3 wrestlers over this year and 11 baseball players. So they're excited about the co-op continuing with us. I guess I'll just add, I've been very excited about the positive trends that we've had in our district. The adding of FFA, more things to get our kids involved. I think the more things that we can get our kids doing, the better off they're going to be. I've seen a lot of additions around the area. Baseball, softball, tennis were added while I was in high school at Beloit, and then they've recently added a clay pigeon team. I don't know what the participation numbers are, it's early this year, but in 2018, when I was the AD, just kind of very off the top of, the numbers, it was about 30% participation. So we had a lot of kids walking out of the door at 3:30. So I don't think, for looking at cutting, I don't believe that taking things away are going to get kids to be involved. It may even be that we look at adding more things, because I know that when I had teammates that were involved in other things when I was growing up in forensics, you had somebody that you might pull into another activity because you were around them somewhere else. Like, hey, that positive peer pressure of, I'm around you, we're friends, why don't you come be on the wrestling team? That's how I got pulled in. I was not a wrestler. I got pulled in as an 8th grader. So I had a very, very quick entry into the sport, and it was difficult, but it was good, and it changed my life for the better. So I just hope that we can continue to stay positive and offer as many things as we can to our students here in the community. And I know right now we don't have a coach. That is very difficult to try and plan for the year without a coach. So earlier today I went ahead and filled out an application and turned in my application for the head wrestling position here. So I'm willing to step up and do what I can to help the program continue to be successful and move forward. And the hope would be that a teacher gets hired that has qualifications within wrestling, and we can have a teacher coach do it, because I firmly believe that when they're walking the halls and they spend that time with the athletes, that it's a very positive experience. But I am willing to step up and do what I can for this program, because I firmly believe in it, and I love what it's done for many young men and women that I've had the honor of spending time with throughout the years. So I don't know if you guys have any questions or...
Most of mine, you already got, so, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Now, I think we have programs offered in the district. We'll have a presentation by Nikki and Eric. If you would like to grab a microphone, you can too. No, talk loud.
Can we just go on your table?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
At least
We have
put
lots
it
of
down,
paper.
just so that, we can make sure that Bree hears well.
Okay,
Never
I
mind.
go to sign.
so,
Greetings here.
okay. All right, so we gathered information as you requested for 3 sports that are probably the ones that have the lowest numbers. So we'll just start with, and I had Eric gather a bunch of information across the state for me, so he's going to join in and help. So we're going to go over fall sports first. So cross country would be the one that has low numbers in the past and actually currently, so go ahead.
So these numbers are from Fran Martin and Keisha in her office. 85% of 118 1A schools had boys cross country last year, and 66%, 78 of those teams had girls. Again, this next part, the data comes from just a media release. NPL that went to a regional, 13 out of the 15 schools, the 2 that didn't were Chase and Tipton. So there's wide, every 13 out of 15 schools have a cross-country team. So cross-country it's good for boys and girls, gives them an opportunity to go in and compete. If you don't have cross-country, it's just kind of tough if you're not a football player and not a volleyball player. It kind of funnels you straight to that. If we didn't have cross-country, you're forced to do a sport. We all know that some kids aren't football players, and that's fine, but it gives them an alternative. So that's just what I had from Fran on all of mine that I have. They are just the straight numbers from the state, so that was mine for cross-country.
Okay, so then the second piece to this that we kind of gathered information for is the expense, because that's really the question. We are tight on money and we're low in some of these activities and we need to probably trim some fat, and that's kind of why we're having this conversation. So I put together a cross-country expense sheet over what of this would have been of last year, what we paid for cross-country expenses, and I think that you guys got some of this information. But what you'll see is our entry fees and the fees that we collect. So we host one cross-country meet a year, okay? And the entry fees that we pay for our athletes to go run was $425 last year. That included regional fees and state fees, because even if our kids make it to state, you have to still pay a fee for them to go. When we hosted our meet, we have a meet the first Thursday usually of October. We collected $563. Now, one thing you need to know about the cross-country meet is that everyone that works at that meet is a volunteer. We do not pay anybody to work there, nobody, okay? So you'll see that we basically, our fees we collect at the cross-country meet that we host pretty much pays plus some for our fees that we have to pay to go to meets. Other things that we pay for, we don't rent the meet, the course. The golf course is donated by the golf course club. We do pay for some porta potties that go out there, and then we have medals. And I will just say generically, like uniforms, that's on every one of these expense sheets, because obviously we have them. We have transportation, we have salaries. Now, some salaries are more expensive than others because we have 2 coaches. Cross country is just 1 coach, so it's a little cheaper. What I would say about cross country is that it's a cheap sport. And that's probably why you'll see 13 out of our 15 league schools have cross country, is because it's cheap. And it does, like Eric said, it gives an option for some of these kids that are not football players, volleyball players. It gives an option for them to just go run. You don't have to have a lot of athletic ability to be a runner. Anybody can do that. So to be, I should say, a good runner, maybe. I should rephrase that. So you'll see a lot of 1A schools have cross country because it is a cheap sport. There's no equipment. I will say our numbers are down this year in the past, compared to in the past. You know, we do have a new coach that has quite a history behind her, so I do feel really confident that she's going to build the program. But it is a good option for our girls and boys. And the other thing that I think that really stands out with our cross country is that we're able to compete with schools that are our size. And that's really hard to do with some of our other sports. So they're able to compete with 1A schools. So that is for cross country. And then we'll go into winter sports. Anything to add for cross country? And there, on that other sheet, there should have been numbers over the years for our cross country. They're up and down. In the last few years, they have been down.
We didn't get it, but
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, the next sheet I have is the just wrestling statistics straight from Mark Wentz's office. He provided the graph. I'm not sure if you got that or not, but and then I just took all the enrollment and classification from the Acacia site and their postseason wrestling release. So I just put where I got all my data. Mr. Naasz, not attacking you at all here. I'm just, I had in this lighter highlighted color, I had 8 standalone wrestling teams, and I put who co-op, so 8, and then 5 schools combined with 5 1As last year. That does include us in Sylvan, so that would be 10. I had a total number of 23 programs, 1A programs in the state. Again, I just put the raw data down. 13 schools that have a wrestling form in some form or fashion have a lower enrollment than we do. So 13 are lower. 1 was tied with us last year, and 8 of those 1A schools have a larger enrollment than we do. So they're, you know, we're in the upper half. But in 3-2-1A, there were 85 teams last year competing, and 1As are 23 of those. I thought that was kind of incredible that 1A is 27% of that. I thought that was pretty high. So I kind of thought 2A and 3A would have more, honestly. but that is out of 246 eligible schools, and it's only 34.5%. And of our 11-team district last year, there were 4 1A schools: Lincoln, Rock Hills, Osborne, and Sylvan. 4 2As: Bennington, El Saline, Republic County, and Smith Center. And then the 3 3As: Beloit, Ellsworth, and Minneapolis. We do have the 4 NPL members. So it'd be, again, Lincoln, Sylvan, Rock Hills, and Osborne. Osborne is the only one that has that standalone team. So hopefully we can get you those numbers, but especially being the basketball coach, I kind of wanted to just give the numbers and not go into anything. That's why I try to, on my cross-country wrestling and my baseball page, I just tried to make it as cut and dry. Took it straight from Fran, Mark Lentz, and then Jeremy Holiday from the Acacia office. So just the numbers that they provided, and they're straight up. So
looking at wrestling expenses, so one of the differences between cross-country and wrestling, you do pay to go to the tournaments. Our kids go to all tournaments. We don't have any duels. And I think part of that is because we just don't have the numbers, so most teams don't want to come and duel us because they're only going to wrestle 1 or 2 kids. So most of our whole schedule is tournaments. That's why. The thing between cross-country and wrestling that I noticed when I was putting this stuff together is cross-country fees, you can pay per athlete. Wrestling fees, when you go to a tournament, other than 1 meet, they were all just a set amount. So if you take 1 wrestler or 20 wrestlers, you're going to pay whatever it is they charge. It is what it is. That's how track is. So looking through our entry fees, you'll see I did the same thing with cross-country, wrestling, and baseball, how many vehicles we took, how many kids participated from Lincoln, and then what our entry fees cost. With the Acacia fees that we didn't have anyone make postseason, so we just had to pay for regionals. We didn't have to pay for state. It was $1,305 to pay for entry fees. Now, with that being said, we do host the Schmeidler Invite, which is the first Saturday of the month, and we host the Leopard Invite, which we charge for both those teams. Other than, like, Dave and Jill do volunteer their time. They don't turn in a time clock, but our table workers, not all of them, sometimes we get volunteers, but most of them turn in their time clocks. We do have to pay for that. We have medals at the Schmeidler, just like at the cross-country meet. We have a hospitality room, and then we have what's called track wrestling, which is how they enter the kids into the program to set up the tournament. And we have to pay for that. And you'll see all those expenses on there. So our teams, they pay $110 to come to our meet. So you can look and see what that costs. Now I will tell you, or what we collect from that, I will tell you, so over the last several years, so I went back to all the books I could find that were in the AD office to see how the Schmeidler, how many teams were coming. So I could only go back to the 1920 school year. So we had 6 teams that were coming to the Schmeidler Invite, and this coming year we're down to 4. We've sent out invites, and we just have not gotten any nibbles. And I think, again, I don't know a lot about wrestling, so I don't want to say that I think I shouldn't, but I think it's because some of the teams that go to our meet, they don't bring a lot of kids, so they get a point system in wrestling, and so they don't want to waste a tournament at Lincoln, and they only get to wrestle 1 or 2 kids, or maybe some of the weight classes only get to wrestle 1 kid, and that's, I think, part of the reason why we're losing teams. So in losing teams, that loses fees that are coming in, but it still costs the same amount to host the tournament. It's unfortunate. The same with we have a Leopard Invite, which is in February. And again, I did the same exact thing. In 1920 year, it was 5. This year we're down to 2 teams that are going to come. One of the teams is El Saline, and we got an email last April, and they are looking at cutting their program, so they would sign a single contract, which is also one of our junior high meets as well, so we're in the process of trying to find a team for the junior high kids to go to. So you go from 5 to 2, that's $110 a team, and that eliminates down pretty quickly as well. The other thing is one of the teams that come to that is Osborne, and they had 3 wrestlers last year, so that kind of gets to be a pretty short night. Again, just like on the cross-country one, there's uniforms, there's coaches' salaries. We have 2 coaches historically in the past. Transportation, I talked about track wrestling. I was trying to think of some other things that we had to pay for. We have to certify our scales every year. I tried to gather all the information that I could for every program that I could think of, the bills that we pay or that I remember paying the last 2 years as an AD. I will tell you, when Sylvan last year brought over wrestlers, they did pay for half of the coaches' salaries. For high school only, they did not pay the junior high salaries. So you can kind of see some data on there. One thing I would probably say between cross-country and wrestling comparing, and I'll compare baseball as well, the expenses for wrestling are significantly more than they are for cross-country. The coaches are more expensive because we have 2 for both high school and junior high. I wouldn't say that their equipment is expensive, it's much cheaper. But they have some expenses that, some of the other sports don't. The other thing about that, and Eric touched on that, is within our league, we don't have a lot of competition. Like, we don't have a lot of 1A schools in our league that we can go, hey, you want to wrestle on Thursday night? It's because they don't have wrestling. So I don't know if that's going to change. I don't know what the trends are. I just can give you the data that I know from the last few years that I've been involved with this. So moving on to baseball.
So, this sheet that says 2021 baseball statistics, again, from Jeremy Holliday's office. I kept kind of getting tangled up in this, so I'll try to make it as easy as possible for you guys. 16 1A schools co-op last year in some form or fashion. Okay, and some of those were with other 1As, others were with 2, 3, or 6A schools. So out of those co-ops, 23 1A schools participated in baseball, whether that was at another school or at their own place. And then 13 have standalone programs for a total of 36 baseball teams. You can look through all the numbers and who combines with who. The interesting thing with all of that, so that again, the percentage of 36 1A schools out of 118, 30.5% of 1A schools offer baseball. So 9 1A schools combine to a larger 2, 3, 4, or 6A program, and they all play at a 3A regional or state level. So the bottom, there's 14 schools left to co-op in 1A and stay at that 2A, 1A. 6 of those do, and we are the only scenario of 2 1A schools combining to go play at 3A regionals. So every other scenario, there's even some 2A and 1A schools that combine and stay 2 1A, and I'm sorry, that is not true. But we are the only 1A co-op that co-ops with another 1A school that goes to 3A regional. So you can look through the numbers. There are standalone teams again, but I thought that was pretty glaring that, last year I did coach baseball as an assistant, and it wasn't a lot of fun going to Minneapolis multiple times that year. And they were really good. They ended up placing at state, but the guys get down. It's tough to stay positive sometimes. We did play. We split with Beloit, but they were a little bit down, and I knew one of their assistants. So then data again, we're kind of somewhere in the middle. It's something to look at. But again, I wanted to just get the straight data from Acacia, and that is what they provided and what is on that sheet. So, if you do have any questions about that, either now or at the end, I didn't get it. It was a little
So
interesting.
we combined to be a 3A because our numbers together are so
Together,
high.
correct.
That's how Keisha does it, yeah.
So all of those, I put the enrollments, any 1A with a 1A school, so that first one, Buckland, Coldwater, and you can go down the
Right.
list. They all compete at 2A, 1A regional. And then, so then if somebody combines with somebody
Because
bigger.
we're on the bigger end of being 1As, where you add us together.
Correct.
And it makes it, and like Mr. Tate said,
It's not fair for the kids.
it's not, but that's how Keisha does it, we don't have a choice. And if you look at our baseball schedule, I've several parents actually last year came up to me and they're like, why do we play Southeast Flinn? Why do we play Minneapolis? Why do we play Clay Center? Ellsworth, Beloit, they're all 3A schools. Well, because nobody else around us has two 1A, there's nobody around us that we can play. We do play Bennington, they're a 2A school, that's pretty much it. I mean, unless you wanna drive and play Ellenwood, but I mean, you're gonna have to drive quite a ways to play a 1A school, to play teams your own size, and then when it comes to postseason, you're
You
gonna
have to
compete
play
3A
anyways.
anyways.
Okay.
It just makes it really difficult as a 1A school to try to compete against a 3A school. We don't have the number of kids, I don't know how much you know about baseball, if you don't have pitchers, you don't have a chance. And that, when your pool's a lot smaller than everyone else's,
Yeah.
it makes it pretty tough to compete in a doubleheader every night with limited pitchers, and it's unfortunate for the kids, really.
Yeah, they have so many more kids to choose from.
They have way more kids.
More, and
Yeah.
and it's worn out as
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah. So,
Sorry, thank you.
yeah, so going over baseball expense sheet, same thing, vehicles and how many Lincoln kids participated, how many Lincoln kids we took from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. So if it was at home, obviously we didn't have any transportation expenses, but we had umpires. Now again, just like in cross-country wrestling and baseball, there's some benefits to one sport than the other. So you still have uniforms across the board. I will say, cross-country uniforms are cheap because all the kids wear their own shorts, we just provide a top. Baseball uniforms are cheap, we just provide a top. We don't have to, they bring their own pants. But baseball equipment is very, very expensive. A bat is about $350.
We have to have a lot of balls.
And catcher's gear is very expensive, and bats get rotated out after so many years. If they're not on the list, we can no longer use them. So you have your pros and cons to every sport. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I'm telling you that one equipment for one sport is going to be more expensive than others. Cross country has no equipment. You have tennis shoes that the kids provide. Wrestling uniforms are probably more expensive than anyone else's because we provide practice gear for them that we wash every night to keep sanitized.
Yes.
So you got your pros and cons to each one. We have 2 baseball coaches. Umpires for a doubleheader is $120 as of last year. I don't know if that'll go up. That's set by the league. So you see those expenses on there. Home games, we pay for Bud he volunteers his time every year to announce, so we don't pay for him, but we do usually have to pay for a score clock and a pitch count person. So our pay rate for that, so I try to figure that in. We have the pay game balls every year, and then, the equipment, whatever we need to replace is kind of expensive. To use it, we do have to pay porta potties for about 1 month because the city won't turn the water on during freezing times. And then I also believe we pay for the electricity, is that right, Greta?
That's correct, yes.
During the use of the field. So I will say, again, that 3A thing, that's tough. There is no gate at baseball, so there's no income that comes in for baseball. Like wrestling, you have a tournament, we can charge a gate. Cross country, we have the entry fees, we don't have a gate for that, but with the entry fees, they get paid. One other thing to keep in mind for baseball is, in the past, we have been fortunate that there's been volunteers to work the field. The city helps us mow it to get it started, but then we have to maintenance it after that, and there's a lot of maintenance to start the season. And the coaches have usually volunteered, but I'm not going to the coaches that we have, whether they will or will not. That's just been fortunate for a while, that we've had parents and coaches that have kind of done it, so if we have to start paying for that, that'll be one thing to keep in mind. Trying to think if there's anything else, you guys have any questions before I look through this, make sure I got everything. I tried to gather data per last year's expenses and what I knew for kids going out. You'll see that in both baseball and wrestling, we start the season well, but we don't usually end the season well. Some of that is eligibility, but a lot of it is kids not staying out. So you see baseball, we started with 8 and the week before. Wrestling was the same. I believe we only took 1 to regional, if I remember right. Sheet.
Should have one
Yeah.
district and 2 of the regional.
Actually, we didn't take, we only took 1 kid to district. And they did, last year because of COVID, they did some goofy stuff. So we had 3 Lincoln kids last year compete in wrestling. And we ended with 1 going to postseason. 1 of them graduated, so we only have 2 that I know of in wrestling that are returning. Baseball, I would say, didn't we come up with that? We were guessing around 5, but we have a freshman class that I would, is pretty baseball. I think might have better numbers for that. Cross country this year, we only have 1 high school runner. So, you guys have any questions for us?
This may be a question for either you or Nate. On his sheet, he shows 8 for high school wrestling, and you show us having 3 max. Was the 8 including Sylvan, or was that?
What, I'm sorry,
On
Yeah,
your
he
wrestling,
includes Sylvan.
he included it.
It
Okay.
includes someone on your sheet when you said 8, correct?
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Just so
I'm sorry, I never consider them separate programs.
Okay,
It's,
okay, just so I'm all on the same page.
they're all our kids.
Yes. Yes, they're all Lincoln County kids.
Thank you guys. Yep.
Which 2 did I ask? He didn't have. So like she read that about Jeremy's office said that.
Everybody want this to
Those were not, I just.
Little, yeah.
Those were
referenced Hoxie on here. It doesn't show up on our 1A, where are they?
They're 2A.
They're 2A. Okay.
I was referencing them as an 8-man,
As an
8-man program, not a 1A.
Okay.
More about a program that we built.
Yeah.
More about a program that we built.
And you can look many places and see how success breeds success. And Central Plains won football and basketball. And it's a mentality that we would love to get back into our buildings, because it's like Eric said, when you go play baseball and you get beat and you get beat and you get beat at this and that, the more we can give our kids a chance to succeed and have a chance to experience winning, the more it'll breed winning. And so I hate to have that come at the expense of some things, but I think at some point we have to put as much talent one direction as we can to breed some of that success. But hopefully we can get there to where we have that excitement. But I would just love to be able to have that success in all of our programs. Those schools have to be fun places to go watch games. Any other comments, questions?
Well, I'm still getting confused and hung up on, Sylvan has 88 and we have 87?
Yeah.
Sylvan has more?
Last year they did, they turned in more than we did at the high school level.
Holy cow, okay.
We had a really small senior class, and it's based on the high school, that's it. And our senior class last year had 19 kids, so that's why.
And they pick up a lot of kids with Lucas and Ray.
Oh.
That's really helped them
Yeah.
with their enrollment, so they do have a good enrollment for their building.
Okay.
I guess I'm wondering where we go on. We're gonna go on a change.
I would like to explain to the board, and I don't know if you're aware of this, Mr. Naasz, but a board, since you're running for the board and unopposed, a board member cannot be an employee of the school district by state statute. And CASA does not allow volunteer Rule 10 coaches. So our legal counsel had said that it's really not a possibility, because even if he would say he would do it for $1, then he's an employee of the district. So he can't volunteer, can't work for the district as a board member. And so I don't know if you were aware of that
Yep.
statute. Okay.
Yep, no volunteer coaches, but I can make a donation for the exact same amount of whatever the salary would be too. There's nothing against the rules there, and I could withdraw from the race. But
And again, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but point of order would be, at this point in the election cycle, you cannot withdraw from the race. You would have to accept the election and resign
yeah,
after the election. And then that clears
yes.
any conflict. Because I appreciated your application, but I had to check with
Yep.
council to make sure that everything was kosher, if you know.
Just trying to fill a void.
Understood.
Thank you.
I gotta say, I do agree with Mr. Naasz that the more programs you have available for kids, the better for opportunities. Unfortunately, also also faced with dwindling numbers of enrollment. And I know in the past, we used to have golf, didn't we, in high school? We used to have tennis. We had a lot of opportunities elsewhere, we also had tennis. And I guess my concern too is if you have kids out for everything, you also are running into risk of burnout for sports and kids. And I know I've heard that personally for some kids, they feel like, I don't get a rest. And I just want to make sure that we have enough participants for the sports that we have. And with the dwindling number and the finances, I would love to keep all the programs rolling. But is it financially feasible right now, or is something we can revisit and reopen programs later? That's, I don't know what the opportunity is to open something later on down years when I have increased enrollment, the opportunities then, because we do have the options still on the, I don't know what you call it, in a negotiated agreement for the golf still in there, the tennis is still in there. So, but what I'm saying is that right now, I think we have to look at what's best for the kids and what's best for our school districts. But I would love to keep it all, but I think we have to come to a decision.
Anyone else have anything they would like to add?
I also, I understand where TJ is coming from, but I also understand that, if it's that one parent that gets that kid to come to school every day, to put their best foot forward, to pull their grades like they're supposed to because they want to participate. How do you take that away? How do you take that away from them? I mean, granted, they could possibly succeed in another sport, I understand that, but if that's their reason for getting up and coming to school every day, and seeing their seat, their person in that seat during class. But,
And if we had
it's a price.
14 out for junior high, does that mean we might see an increase this year in numbers? Or am I looking at that wrong?
On next sheet,
Mm-hmm.
no, look at 14 last year.
I didn't realize there was that many out in junior high, that's.
Do you have any feeling towards that, or?
Any idea?
I can tell you the 14, most of them all went to basketball camp this summer. I can't tell you what they're gonna go out for. Some of those were 7th graders. Of the 8th graders that wrestled, they all went to basketball camp. So, again, I don't know what they're gonna do. I have an inkling, I can kind of lean,
Yes.
But until that
but till
starts.
the day of practice, kids are very easy to say, I'm gonna do something until it comes time to do something.
Yes.
So, yes, maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
You make valid points too about teachers in the building, and Mr. Smidler was the person for that program, and he built it, and he worked with those kids, and he was in the building, and we've lost that coach to kid contact, which we don't have, but we do have it in our other sports that I think we can build those similar relationships with. And so I don't know, the best way to move forward, and I don't think we can just fire a teacher and say we're going to hire somebody that's going to be a wrestling coach just so we can get the program back up and going. I think over time maybe that coach will, maybe the next person like Schmeidler that loves wrestling will get that position in our building and say, I'm going to start a wrestling program and I'm going to get 10 kids involved and we're going to build this thing and we're going to bring it back to what it was. And I would be all for that because that person would have that personal contact. That's what we want with those kids, and that's what brings them to school. And we need to encourage our coaches that we have to make that contact with kids, to encourage them to come out to do those, the FFA, the volleyball, the basketball, football, all of those. If you have that person in the building, and that's why we passed our policy thing to try and get teachers to be coaches so that they have that interaction throughout the day. You need to get your grades up. You need, to be at practice, I need to be at school. That's that contact that makes it work. So I struggle with some of these sports where we don't have that in the classroom contact. It's tough.
I don't have the history that everybody else does, so I lack in that. I totally agree with Patty. I totally agree that with TJ, that we look at everything. I think as a board, you're at a point where there either needs to be a motion or this needs to be tabled. Right now, we do not have a coaching staff. We aren't far from not being able to get out of contracts for that. So I don't want to push, but we could sit here and look at each other for the next hour. It simply needs, either a motion needs to be made or we need to table this thing, you know? And again, I don't know this historic coach. I've been in schools that had them, and I get that. We live in a different time now, and there aren't many of those around anymore. But I think that as a board as a whole, you do need to make a decision on where we're gonna head.
Can we go back, so are we saying there's no way we can coach at all? I was confused by some of that, so can we go back and revisit that?
That would be totally up to Mr. Naasz as to what he would propose as far as personnel. The state statute, like I said, as a board member and as an uncontested candidate, that pretty much you would assume would be a board member, right?
I can lose to a write-in. I'll never leave the house again.
That's pretty true. But as he said, he could resign from that board position and then he would be free to do and apply for whatever he wanted, and it would be a legal hire at that point.
My curiosity, I called the clerk's office to verify whether you could drop out today or where you at, and you have to stay till. Is that November or would that be January when you're actually on the board? I did not get that clarification, so.
He can decline the position after the election is certified.
In November. I don't have to wait till January.
No, you won't have to,
That's
because
just when you see it.
I was
Okay.
elected on write-in votes, so I had, after they certified the election, I had so much time with which to say if I wanted, I could decline it, I could resign, and I chose not to. But, yeah.
That would be the scenario that Coach Naasz could be coach here.
I hate the idea of having to cancel any programs that we offer our kids. You know, I know that money is tight, I know that participation is low. My biggest concern is the ability to have coaching staff. I mean, I would feel probably a little more comfortable if we said, maybe if we don't have a coach this year. I hate the idea of giving up on a program if we have the potential for numbers coming up, like in the junior high and whatnot. You know, so we had a bad year or two, what if we can rebuild the program? And it is an opportunity for kids. And for some kids, it's a great opportunity for them and a sport that they love. I had a nephew that wrestled for me. He loved it.
Can I add something? So 2 years ago, we lost a teacher at high school that wasn't replaced. And our schedule is now struggling to stay alive because of that. I'm not saying that we need to cut programs, but it's really, really hard for me that nobody went to bat for a teacher position. And now we are struggling, it was journalism, and so now we're struggling to put a yearbook out because we don't have a teacher to teach it. And thankfully, Brenda stepped up, but she didn't have the time in the day to do that. and we're discussing programs that have little numbers, 1 or 2 kids, and when you do the math, I hate to say this, but this is a business, and where was everyone at when it came time to replace that teacher? We're here to educate. And I also agree with you, Patty, that one carrot might keep a kid in school, but it might cost us a lot of money too. We have a lot of opportunities in our classrooms for kids too. We can't take that away.
The expenses for wrestling are markedly higher than they are for the other two. I'm not saying that means only wrestling, I don't know, maybe they should all go, maybe none of them should go, but when you look at for success, the Lincoln part of the program, because some kids don't wrestle for Lincoln if they go to state. They
Not
wrestle,
the state they wrestle.
yes, they wrestle for Sullivan. So as far as a Lincoln kid being at state or having any real success in it, in several years, there unfortunately hasn't been that. And if that's costing us $10,000 a year to not have any real success and possibly have 2 or 3 kids in the program. And of course, it sounds like there's one in cross country, is that what you said?
One in high school cross country, yeah. Did you guys get the sheet with the salaries on it for this year? Projected salaries,
Yes.
you did get that?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
referring to.
that's just salaries, so it's pretty significant for all of the sports.
Did you say that cross-country, if somebody wanted to run, even if we didn't pay for the program, if Jenna wanted to work with somebody or somebody wanted to run, they could still go to a meet and run, or not?
Well, we have to pay Keisha to say that we're gonna have a cross-country program at the beginning of the year. So like you're saying, if we had a coach that would volunteer,
Well, I guess I'm saying if we cut the program, even if we didn't have a coach and some kid said, I want to run cross-country and I'm going to run every morning, they can't participate anywhere.
would you allow them, you would have to allow them to represent Lincoln at the meet? Put on a Lincoln jersey and say, I'm from Lincoln High School. If you're willing to do that, then yeah, you potentially could.
Okay.
I know in the later years of golf, I think that was one of the issues. We didn't have a golf coach, and if the kids just would go golf, could they represent Lincoln? That was one of the discussions towards the end of the golfing program.
Okay.
Baseball, supposedly a lot of the freshmen are baseball minded, so I don't know if that means more success like there used to be back in the Kelly Gephardt years. I mean, that's been a long time ago. I mean, when you guys ran high school, it possibly should have been, God, you guys would have had a track team, your boys were in baseball.
I had gone off track, yes. Yes.
One thing I would add to any of those programs, really, they can compete, we have a summer Legion program. So if a kid wanted to play baseball, they could play baseball on our summer Legion league, and they would, if the potential to be recruited, they could be recruited at Legion tournaments. Same for wrestling, they can Federation wrestle till they're 18 years old, so that opportunity is there. There are cross-country meets that you can go run in. The opportunity to participate outside of high school is definitely there.
I don't think in any way this is a one and done conversation, because I think each year, unless we somehow see a grand boom in Lincoln County, that each year we're going to struggle to keep all programs afloat. So I think it's going to have to continually be revisited, and we probably have to act each year on something, whether we like it or not. It's probably coming. So. We do have baseball coaches. So,
Are there any other sports we're missing coaches?
We are missing an assistant boys basketball coach. And wrestling. But we have certified teachers, and pretty much all of our head coaching is certified teachers, which I'm pretty sure is gonna make a tremendous difference this year. I'm actually looking forward to sports. I think that connection in the hallway, the connection at school, it just makes a world of difference. As being the AD, the difference between a teacher, and I'm not saying all Rule 10 coaches, but that connection that you make all day for 8 hours a day, they might be your teacher, you might see them in the hallway, you might see them at lunch, it changes things.
I move we stop the wrestling program at this time, unfortunately.
do I have a second to that motion?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is that just like this year and reevaluate next year? Because if we have 10 or 15 kids come and say, we want to wrestle next year, we're here, we're doing it all year, would we revisit it then? Or are you saying one and done?
Are we saying done, or are we saying just suspending for this year?
I did not say for the 21 season. I said,
Okay, all right.
it can be
Just
rebuilt,
clarifying.
restarted, but stop is how I make a motion.
I don't know what we did with golf or tennis, but I assume if we still have whatever, if we had 15 people come and want to do it, we can probably get back to it. So I would say we do the same, similar thing. I would second that motion so that we can move along. We've got to come to a point where we either vote up or down. So, any other discussion?
This is Bree. Can you please clarify what the motion is?
Okay, the motion on the table is that we stop the wrestling program for this year,
No,
No.
at this time, at this time.
Forever.
Okay.
Did you hear that, Bree?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, hearing no other discussion, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, I have three.
That's Bree.
Bree? Okay, noes?
I'm a no.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. So we have 3 noes, and 3 ayes, and 1 abstention. And that would be a no vote. Okay. So, motion failed. To stop the wrestling program now. Do we have any other motions on baseball or cross country?
Cross country's already done.
Okay.
I mean, is that?
I think you need to revisit it next spring.
Okay.
I won't be on the board, but I think it needs to be something discussed, because you're looking at the same expense, I mean, not same expense, but for one student.
I would agree. I think come May, we should probably revisit cross-country and wrestling after the seasons are over, and then revisit visit baseball about this time next year and see how that season went, and see. It's gonna be a yearly thing because our enrollment's down again this year, so I think that it's,
Well, what happens if we don't find a basketball coach? Are we,
We have a couple nibbles.
okay, very good, very good.
So, just a quick question for clarification for myself. I know currently we did not have a coach except for Mr. Naasz, I mean, you volunteered to do it. And I know that's a choice that he has to make and come to. What if we stand there in January and do not
When
have
does the
a
season
coach?
begin?
well, if you look at this sheet, when they went to their first meet
Right,
last year,
for
it was
Mr. Naasz,
December
we don't
11th.
see the school board too.
So I assume the second week in November, right around Thanksgiving, is usually when fall sports or winter sports practice starts. So,
John, I'd like to make another motion.
okay,
Can we just put wrestling on hold for this season, this year?
okay. Have another motion on the table to suspend wrestling for 1 year due to the lack of a coach
Coach and participation.
and participation numbers. Okay. Do I have any second to that motion?
I'll have to second that.
Okay. TJ will second that motion. Did you get that, Bree?
Yes, I did, thank you.
Okay. The new motion on the table is to suspend the wrestling program for this year due to lack of a coach. We have a motion from David, seconded by TJ. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, we have 4. Okay. Opposed? Bree, are you opposed?
I'm a no.
Okay, so that would pass 4-3 to suspend the program for this year. And if we have a coach and have interest next year, we will have the team. Okay. Motion carried. All right. Let's see if I can get my papers in order. Any other motions towards anything there? If not, we will move on to number 5 on your agenda, Great Plains Manufacturing donation. I think Scott would like to say something to that.
I'd like to thank Great Plains Manufacturing, first of all, that, again, I don't want to just constantly sing accolades to our new staff member who is moving and shaking and getting things done. But Morgan Nish was able to acquire a 1,500-pound steel donation to the FFA/welding/ag mechanics class so that they have material to practice on and work with. So shout out to Morgan and a big thank you to Great Plains for that donation.
Woo-hoo.
I move we accept it.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by David, seconded by Deb, that USD 298 Board of Education approve the donation from Great Plains Manufacturing of 1,500 pounds of steel to be used by the metal shop class for projects. All in favor?
Aye.
7-0. Okay. Okay. Next, we need executive session for personnel. Okay, 30 minutes. Do you want a motion?
I'll move we go into executive session for personnel, 30 minutes.
Okay, seconded by David.
Sorry.
That USD 298 Board of Education go into executive session at 8:12 for 30 minutes with the superintendent for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel, and that the Board of Education return to open meeting at 7:42 in the board Board of Education conference room. The executive session is required to protect the 8:42. Executive session is required to protect the privacy interests of identifiable individuals under coma. All in favor?
Aye.
7-0.